All right, let's dive in. Today we're going to trace the journey of a voice that is, well, truly unbreakable. It's a story that starts with the beat of a drum in ancient Africa, a voice that somehow survived the brutal silence of slavery, and now, believe it or not, it echoes across the entire digital world. It is an absolutely incredible story of cultural survival. So let's start with a really fascinating question. Can a drum actually talk? It sounds like something out of a fantasy, right? But this question takes us straight to West Africa, where for the Yoruba people, the answer is a resounding yes. In fact, it's a whole language. Yeah, this quote really gets right to the heart of it. You see, the Yoruba language is tonal, which means changing the pitch of a word can completely change its meaning. By squeezing and striking their dùndún drum, a master player can perfectly copy the tones and rhythms of speech. So get this, they're not just playing music, they are literally reciting poetry, telling stories, and conveying really deep emotions. Okay, so this incredible mix of music and language, where did it come from? It didn't just pop up out of thin air. No, it flows from a really deep cultural wellspring, from an ancient and powerful civilization. And here it is. This is the source, the ancient city of Ile-Ife. For the Yoruba people, this place was the center of the entire world. I want you to just try and picture this, a bustling center of political power, a place of deep spiritual life, and home to some of the most breathtakingly sophisticated art in terracotta and bronze you've ever seen. But this amazing culture, with its talking drums and powerful kingdoms, well, it was about to face a test. A truly unimaginable test. Wow, that number, 15.4 million, it's just staggering, almost impossible to wrap your head around. And you have to remember, every single one of those numbers was a person, a family, a whole community just torn apart. For centuries, the transatlantic slave trade forcibly dragged millions of Africans, including countless Yoruba people, across an ocean, stripping them of everything, except their spirit. So this timeline, it just lays out this shocking contrast, right? On one hand, you have these flourishing African empires, and on the other, the brutal, dehumanizing reality of slavery. And I want you to pay close attention to that shift to Cuba, where by the mid-1800s, enslaved people were the majority of the population. This was the crucible. This is where that voice had to figure out a new way to speak, or be silenced forever. So that's the big question, isn't it? How do you keep your culture alive when everything, your language, your music, your faith, is forbidden? Well, the answer is just, it's one of the most brilliant acts of cultural preservation you'll ever hear about. It all comes down to this one amazing idea, syncretism. Think of it like a kind of cultural camouflage. The enslaved Yoruba people, they were incredibly strategic. They merged their own gods, the Orishas, with the Catholic saints that were forced on them. So they could look like they were praying to a saint, but secretly, in their hearts, they were honoring their own gods, hiding their faith in plain sight. Okay, this is a perfect example of how this actually worked. You have Babalu Aye, the powerful Yoruba Orisha of sickness and healing. He was merged with San Lazaro, or Lazarus, that biblical figure covered in sores. So to the slave owners, this just looked like good Catholic devotion. But for everyone on the inside, They knew this was a powerful way to keep their ancestral faith alive. And what started as this, secret strategy for survival, it didn't just survive, it blossomed. It grew into this incredibly rich and complex religion in its own right, Regla de Ocha e Fa, which most of us know today as Santeria. It became this absolutely essential part of Cuban culture and identity. All right, so the faith adapted, but that unbreakable voice, it wasn't done. It found another powerful way to make itself heard, through poetry. Just listen to these lines. They're from 1878. They translate to, "How white the young lady is, how black her poor slave. But if the colors of the soul showed on the face, how white the black woman would be, how black the white woman would be." Can you believe that? It's a total flip of the script on the racial hierarchy, basically saying that true character, true morality, has nothing to do with skin color. So yeah, Afro-Cuban poetry became this crucial space for resistance and for reclaiming identity. This wasn't just stuffy literature, It was raw. It was a drumbeat on the page, full of the rhythms of Africa and the language of Cuba. It was a powerful tool to fight back against injustice and take back a stolen history. Okay, but this story of survival and resilience, It was never going to be contained to just one island. Because of political changes and migration, this voice started to echo all across the globe. So the story of this voice becomes a story of movement, of diaspora. It starts, of course, in its spiritual center, Havana. But then, with Cuban exiles, it travels and finds a huge new home in Miami. And from there, it just keeps spreading across Latin America to places like Veracruz in Mexico. And then, in our own time, it adapts yet again, finding a truly global community all connected through the internet. But this journey wasn't always a smooth one. And this quote is so important. It shows that practitioners in the United States had to fight for their religious freedom, and they took that fight all the way to the Supreme Court. In the end, the court's decision protected their right to practice, basically saying that this ancient voice had every right to be heard in the modern world. And that's the key thing to remember here. This isn't some ancient relic in a museum. It's alive. People are having these passionate debates right now about whether to go back to original African practices or embrace the unique Cuban traditions. New practices are popping up to fit modern life, and the internet, well, it's connecting people and spreading knowledge in ways that were totally unimaginable just a generation ago. So all of this leaves us with one final big question. When you look at this whole journey of the Yoruba voice, from a talking drum in Africa through the absolute horrors of slavery to a global digital faith, you see something really profound about what it means to be resilient. It shows us that survival isn't just about preserving the past. It's about the incredible, unbreakable power to adapt, to transform, and to keep on speaking.